It gives me great pleasure to welcome Nilesh Parmar on to Mind Movers. We've had Nilesh on Dental Leaders, but fresh off his interview with Stephen Bartlett. Nilesh, thanks for coming in, firstly.
Pleasure.
And it's much more intimate when you're actually in the same room.
My idea.
Yeah, when someone looks at your life from the outside, on paper it does look delicious. Racing cars, multiple degrees, practice owner, implantologist, all of that. But where I want to go now is what you're struggling with right now.
Thank you for the introduction. That's very nice. And it's a really good question. I love the way you just go straight into it, you know. What am I struggling with at the moment? You know, the thing is, the life you see online, and I think we all know that, isn't always the reality, right? It's the highlights. It's not everything else that goes on behind closed doors. And I think we almost have this issue of not sharing kind of like the bad stuff that happens. For me, touch wood, career has been good. You know, what I do, I find very easy. I don't find it difficult. It doesn't stress me out. I don't find it challenging. If now that I'm, and I hate to say it, 42 going on 43 in a few months.
42 going on 17.
Acting like a 17-year-old is...
Asian don't raisin.
Asian don't raisin. Exactly, I like that. I got to write that down. I knew I'd get some one-liners from this.
Yeah.
Is that now... So I started doing my will recently. And it's really strange to see your life down on paper. Like every asset, everything you have just down on paper. It's quite a humbling experience. And then when the solicitor who you're doing it with says, okay, so have you got a wife? And you go, no. He goes, okay, you've got a girlfriend? And you go, no. He goes, children, partner? No. Ex-wife? No. He goes, do you have anyone to leave this stuff to? And I said, yeah, my sisters and my nephew. And he goes, okay. He goes, oh, that's really unusual. And I go, why? He goes, someone in your position who's amassed wealth usually has a partner, usually has someone, and you don't have anyone. And that kind of hit me. That really, really hit me. I was like, shit, all these years I've just been working my ass off, and it wasn't the pursuit of happiness, it was the happiness I got from the pursuit. It was just the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And then you sit down and you think, if I met someone now, and if I got married, let's say in 3 or 4 years' time, and we had kids, would I see my grandkids? Like, would I be alive to see my grandkids? Or would I be alive to see my grandkids go to school or do like their first fun run or something? And I think that was something that I struggled with a little. It was that realization of you've done so much, but also you've done so little. Like, what's your legacy? And that was something that kept popping up in my head is, what's your legacy? What
I
are you gonna
think
do?
A couple of things from what you've just said really resonate in a way, and I think it's quite refreshing for a man to be speaking about these things. The reason why I say this, Payman and I talk about this often, is that women often talk about the biological clock. So you often hear them panicking about children, recognizing that they have a finite time. But what I've come to recognize is that men also don't necessarily want to be really old dads, which is pretty much what you're saying. I want children, but I also want to potentially live to see my grandchildren. And I think that's something that we don't hear men talk about often enough. And we just assume, you know, if you're a good-looking, successful guy who's 50, you're going to go for a 35-year-old woman, that's fine. But as you said, when your kid's 10, you're 60. When your kid's 20, you're 70. And sure, we're living a lot longer, etc., etc. But I think, you know, there is something to be said for that. One pattern, though, I think that I've noticed is that the older you get, the more picky that you become, because also I feel that your wisdom allows you to become more picky about partners. I was having dinner with a friend yesterday and we were having a little bit of a catch up about our university friends that got married when they were 27, 28. And surely 10 years later, the problems start showing up, the cracks. You know, I'm like, how's this couple doing? Oh, well, he works all the time and he's never in the house and he's been coming home at 3 a.m. and she's just looking after the kids. And when I see them together in the kitchen, it's not even as if they like each other anymore. And then there's another couple on the verge of divorce because the conflict in the Middle East, she's Jewish, he's Muslim, has driven them apart.
Yeah.
And you know what I think to myself? I think, you know, there's two sides to every story. I think you got young Payman, you got married young as well, so it'd be interesting to hear your point of view. But I think there's two sides to this, right? Because if you have waited till later on, which includes me and you, to settle down, you develop language and wisdom that may help your future relationship, you know? And I think that that's a healthy thing because then you know how to really relate to them, make sure that you're not triggering them. You have the language and the communication basically around this kind of stuff. So I think, it can work both ways.
Conversely, I think you also become very set in your ways, and you become very much a creature of habit, especially men. I think we're very much like, right, I do this. And especially for me, I'm so regimental in everything I do. I find great happiness in getting up and knowing that my day is planned, that I've got this, and this. And in my head, I'll have timings for certain things. Not exact timings, but timings. And so I've never lived with a woman. I've never lived with a girlfriend or anything like that. I've lived with
Why?
It's a good question. For a long time, especially when I was studying, I used to see my girlfriend at the weekends. It'd be like Friday night, Saturday night, and then she was gone. And then I'd reboot, and on a Monday, I was back to work. So I had all these work things that I wanted to do, all these things that I wanted to achieve. And the girlfriend just seemed like a weekend sort of thing. I wasn't willing to commit the weekdays to her. And it was only recently, or perhaps in the last few years, that I start understanding that, okay, you need a relationship. You need to have
time.
And as Stephen Bartlett says, you want deep, meaningful connections with people. That's the key thing. If you can develop deep, meaningful connections with people, everything else comes easily. And when you're so set in your ways, I mean, the only woman I've lived with is my sister. And we used to drive each other, well, she used to drive me mad, but generally we used to get along quite well. But when you've not lived with someone, you don't get to know them as well, because life isn't going out and going on holidays and going out for dinners and things like that. It's that core familiarity you get when you live with someone. And I think a lot of the guys that I know, I don't know any single guys now. I'm the only one. I don't know anyone.
Really? What, within the dental community or wider circle, or both?
In my close friend circle. So in my friend circle, and I had my 20-year reunion from my first degree, and we went round, and there was about 35 of us who turned up, and we went round the room. And I was expecting everyone to be fat and ugly and disheveled. I was really disappointed. They all looked really good, actually. And everyone was like, married kid, second married, third kid, And everybody went round. And it was, for me, it was just a realization that you've focused so much on career, and the things, when I talk to a lot of younger people, and I mentor now as well, one of the things I say is, look, don't lose sight of what the end goal is, or what you want from your life. Sit down and write it down. What do you want from your life? It's so easy to get tied up in the kind of Instagram realities that I want private jets, and I want to go this, I want to do car tours and all this sort of stuff. But then you can only do that for so long, right? You need to develop those deep, meaningful connections. You can't just sacrifice everything for that. You need to have family. You need to put effort into relationships. And that was something that I didn't learn until probably in the last 5 years.
I think I'm going to challenge you on that as well, because again, it's a twofold situation. People that don't know who they are and then choose to get married young, sure, they can form a connection, but then I would argue that perhaps they find it even more difficult to pursue their dreams that set them up for the life that they can have and provide for their family. Like, you're unlikely, say you marry someone young, you've grown together, sure, it worked out for a few years, but then you've got a mortgage, kids, alimony, etc., and you have this dream of like leaving your job in the city and pursuing a startup. You can't really do that. Does that make sense? So I think we have to make conscientious choices. Come on, like, what you're going to say to me that somebody that's the sole provider, he's got a wife that became a housewife, has 2 children, say that he wants to leave the marriage because he's unhappy, and then he's still got to pay for the house, the divorce, etc., etc. He's not going to suddenly quit his job with stable income to, do a startup.
It's less likely to take risks.
Less likely to take risks. Now, I think you're right. Like, have you both seen the deathbed thing? About the nurse that said the biggest deathbed. Do you know it? Yeah. So for those that don't know it, basically a nurse had come out. She wrote a book on it, so I really recommend it, about the 5 deathbed things that people said that they wish they had achieved in their life. One big factor, as you said, is that they wish they'd spent more time with their loved ones. So you can interpret that in any way that you consider. I think that is really important to nourish relationships, but I don't think your only relationship in life is your relationship. Like, you still have deep, meaningful connections with your family, for example. And I think hindsight, Payman, chime in, please, because how old were you when you got married?
31.
Yeah, so how do you feel, like, on the other side? Because I'd say that's fairly young, to get married. And do you feel, because obviously as you got older and wiser, like, how do you feel your life changed, how you navigated a relationship? What's your kind of perception?
I mean, it depends on the particular relationship, right? So you have a particular relationship, but I'm interested in what you're saying about girlfriends. I've seen lots of girlfriends of yours over the years.
Lol.
Over the years,
Lol,
right?
lol, lol.
Over the years.
So have I.
Over the years, yeah.
And so each of these relationships has failed before you've even lived together. Yeah. So when you look back on it, do you see a pattern of self-sabotage? Does it get to a certain point and you get scared and push him away, or are you attracting the wrong kind of woman? Or what,
Are you attracted to the wrong person?
What kind of patterns are you seeing in the
So
failure of those relationships?
It's really interesting. So the last relationship I was in, she sat me down one day and she said, "Look, I don't feel I'm not getting to know the real you. We're not having that connection." And I was like, "What do you mean?"
How did you feel?
Really well. I felt a bit prosecuted almost. I felt as if I was.
But did you feel a
myself.
connection with her?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I did. But so she suggested doing something called the landmark form. I don't know if you've ever heard of
Yeah.
I've been on it.
So,
I've heard some dodgy stuff about it too.
So it's very American. They really push it. They're very, very pushy.
Yeah.
But you get from it what you want to get from it, right?
Cool.
You don't take it too seriously. The first time I did it, and I've done it twice, I walked out on the last day. I just had enough.
You were like, I'm done, yeah.
I was like, I'm done. And I've got a very logical brain, not a very emotional brain. Very, very, so it's really hard to break through to me for that sort of stuff. I'm like, 1 + 1 is 2. I don't deal with, non-absolutes. And then I did it and I almost had a revelation about so many things. And it made me understand how, and coming from an Asian background where your parents, where my dad, who is a dentist, an orthodontist, did 6 days a week working and you guys know, doing 6 days a week for 40 years is intense, right? In what we do. And his main rhetoric was because he was born very, very poor, and he would tell me amazing stories about how they would save up to go to the cinema on a Friday, and he had 7 brothers and sisters. They would save up, they'd buy 1 chicken, everyone used to get a piece, and 1 bottle of Coke, and that would be shared amongst everyone. So they grew up with nothing. And his thing was just to work very, very hard, and it was just working hard, sheer willpower to be successful and to put money and to put the kids through education, etc. That's all our parents ever wanted. So I grew up just seeing hard work. I didn't grow up seeing deep, meaningful connections. I grew up just seeing work, and that's what I emulated, right? When I grew up, that's what I did. I did what my dad did, just work my ass off. And it was only after I did that course, then I started having conversations with people that I never had before.
Yeah, so explain, in that course they encourage you to phone someone that you've wronged.
Yeah, they'll encourage you to phone someone
they
who
do
you've
that.
wronged.
They do that in like AA and all those addiction
Yeah.
stuff. Like you have to kind of like repent, like
Exactly.
the way you've treated people.
So I had a very,
I'm into that.
I had
I'm
a very
into that.
strange conversation with my brother, but go ahead. Who did
Yeah.
you call?
I obviously phoned up an ex-girlfriend, right?
Okay.
Well, you felt that you'd wronged her.
So I phoned up an ex-girlfriend that I had wronged, and apologised, etc., etc.
How did she take that?
She was fine. It was a long, long time ago.
But what was it? What was the thing you'd wronged her with, if you're happy to talk about it?
Basically, she was very much in love, and I just thought, I've had enough now. I don't want to be in a relationship anymore. I want to be single again. I want to have some fun and be a lad about town. So I just ended the relationship. When she was madly in love, like madly in love.
So she felt blindsided almost.
Totally blindsided. It's like having the best day of your life, and the next day somebody saying no, we're just pulling all of that from under you. And that's exactly what I did. And it was a really shit thing to do, but I didn't understand. For me, it was like, okay, done. Delete the number. I'm finished. It's out of sight, out of mind. And you didn't realize that there are repercussions. When you're in a relationship with someone and you do things, there's repercussions onto their life as well. And whatever you do, even after the relationship, there can be repercussions on their life as well. Once you imprint on each other, you are almost connected for quite a long period.
Do you believe in karma?
Yeah, very much so.
So I feel like you're talking about karma basically in a way.
But what do you believe about karma? I bet you do, right? I bet you believe that.
I mean, I have a real innate sense of wrong and right and a real sense of consciousness. And I often wonder, because I grew up in my father's side of the family are extremely Christian, like extremely, so like Coptic Christians are basically like Greek Orthodoxes. They're very they're very religious, and because they're the minority of Christians in the Middle East, they take it very seriously. And my father really wasn't like that. And my mum's Catholic, so my father did like the blasphemous thing by marrying a Catholic when he was a Coptic Christian. But my grandmother like made me feel like this, like I'm gonna go to hell, like for wearing like revealing clothes, for like not like. And I went to a Catholic primary school, so I feel like this innate sense of wrong and right. Like, did you ever have that thing as a kid where you like tell like a white lie or you wouldn't do something, and then you felt like you'd go to hell? I don't know. Like I had that I really had that like innate sense of wrong.
There's a lot of guilt in religion, but how does that relate to karma?
Because then I thought that if I wronged somebody, it would come back to me tenfold. So I think that that's what makes me think about karma, as I often think about, if I'm impacting somebody's life in a negative way, it's going to come back at me tenfold. So every decision, and often like people describe me as being a bit of a pushover. I'm very emotional, sensitive, you know this. And I think, I might be a pushover sometimes, but my genuine thing is like, if I do respond with kindness and genuine kindness, I do believe it comes back to me in another way, rather than responding with like aggression and hate.
And has that happened over time?
I think that over time, the kindness has enabled me to forgive more easily. And I think that forgiveness is a lot more powerful than people think, because forgiveness allows you to move on with your life. You know, I don't forget, but I forgive. That's what I say. I'll be like, cool, they did this to me. I forgive them. This is their own shit that's going on, but I won't forget. Therefore, I won't really trust them anymore, but I just move on from it, you know?
So what's your understanding of karma?
So I was always brought up with from my dad, a good sense of right and wrong, right? You treat people well, you do things as they should be done, and you try and do the right thing as a man should do, right? But sometimes we always walk away from the path now and then. You always come back, but you walk away from the path. And karma for me was just, if you're a good person, good things will happen to you. It's very simple. It's very black and white. But sometimes it's also that self-awareness, because you might be doing something and you don't realize how much you're hurting someone. And you're doing it without even thinking about it. And for me, after I did Landmark, the conversations I had with a girlfriend at the time became very, very different. In my eyes, we connected a lot more, and we were having much more deeper conversations, not just where we're going, what we're going to eat, what we're doing here, and you know, just surface level. You know, you have like level 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So we were more dotting around 3 and 4 as opposed to 1 and 2. And I'd been seeing this individual for 6 to 9 months, and only after I'd done Landmark were we having conversations that I never knew so many of these things about her. And then I started revealing things about me, and I'm quite private about my vulnerable conversations, and especially with a girlfriend who you have that kind of old-fashioned Indian mentality where the man has to be the man, right? You don't want to be vulnerable in front of your partner. But then it all just started to flow out. And I remember one night, I think we must have spoken for 4 or 5 hours about everything. So literally that person knows everything about me, and things that I don't think I've ever told anyone. And that was that kind of idea of deep, meaningful connection. I mean, we broke up in the end, which was a bit ironic anyway, but that kind of, maybe I scared her off, but that idea of having that connection, you felt so much closer to that person, because the level of trust just goes up to another level, because you've told them all of these things about you that you've never told anyone, and that was one thing that I always struggled with. But
so is that what you're saying? Are you saying the pattern of relationship breakdown in the past has been that you haven't shown all of yourself to your girlfriend?
You'd always hold something back. You'd always hold something
Where do you think
back.
that comes from?
A lot of it comes from, I would say, being bullied as a kid. I think being made to feel as if you weren't good enough. When I had loads of bullying when I was a child, and like I said, I had a stammer. I was quite short and fat, and my mum really liked me having like a big afro kind of haircut. So the kids used to call me Mushroom, because I had like a big headphone, looked a bit like that. And I didn't even realise people would call me Mushroom and chant Mushroom to me, and I was like, why are they talking about Mushroom? It's some Indian thing. And there's only the teacher said, okay, they're calling you Mushroom. And I was like, why? Because of your hair. And I was like, oh, it's really not nice, isn't it? And I think because of that, you became quite closed off. So as a child, I remember I'd come home from school where the other kids were playing football and stuff outside.
Was it Southend?
This was in Southend.
And were there not many Asians in Southend back then?
There were. In my class, there was one other brown guy. Mm-hmm. And I remember I used to get a little Cadbury's chocolate buttons, little mini thing, packet of crisps, and a little mini can of like Coke. I'd go to my room and I'd watch TV. Like I wouldn't go outside. And then I was playing computer. I was very introverted as a child. So much so that I became very shy around women. The more attractive the woman, the more shy I got, and the more attractive the woman, the more my stammer came out. And then at sixth form, because I went to a boys' school, at sixth form, that's when you had girls come in, and I was sat next to one of the most gorgeous, at the time, one of the most gorgeous girls. I literally just was paralyzed, couldn't talk. I found it so difficult. And this girl was lovely. She'd have a conversation with me. She must have thought I was some stupid kid that had a speech impediment, because I was just like, literally couldn't talk to her. And when you have there's different types of stammer, but the stammer I had, there were certain words you can't say, and you change the phrasing of the sentence, so you change the word, but usually that word doesn't always make sense. So you would say things and they'll sound really weird to it, and that would get, the more stressed I got, the worse it would get, and then my gag reflex would kick in as well. So you're almost like a nervous wreck at one point. And when I got into university, it just disappeared.
Wow.
Overnight, it just disappeared.
Did dentistry give you
Because he
confidence?
reinvented himself in university, right?
No, did dentistry give you confidence?
Both. So you're both right. Getting into dental school gave me confidence, because I never got in. I got no offers, nothing. I got in through clearing.
Yeah.
Right. My parents hid all the failure letters from me. It was all like shoved down the back of the sofa. He really get in. And I was like, I don't think it's gonna happen. I was like, so strange. Nobody's written to me. What's going on?
Yeah.
So got in through clearing, and then turned up first day of uni, and it just disappeared, because you're right. It's a new start. You reinvent yourself, and that, I'd like to say that was Nilesh, and then it became Nil. It was very two different.
I remember clearly in Cardiff, on my first night in Cardiff, being this other person than the person I was 2 nights before as a sixth former.
A lot of people reinvented themselves
And
at university.
I'm actually telling my son to leave London for this same reason, in case there's an evolution.
But I think like it completely depends. Like some people, I remember very clearly, like first of all, I had no interests in the dentists themselves, because as soon as I saw them, I was like, these are not my people. I naturally loved people in the creative and the arts. I did English, philosophy, chemistry and biology, so I naturally gravitated towards people that did like very woo-woo type subjects, you know, really analysing human behaviour. So I applied to the halls. They called it the Harry Potter halls. It was called Devonshire Halls. I remember it. Really hard to get into, and it was all the boarding school lot that were there. And I was done with North London, because you know what it was like in North London. I was like, done with Highgate, UCS boys, done with all that, like, you know, all the Jews, the Arabs, the Chinese. I was like, I want to go like completely opposite and go into something like white boarding school, like Harry Potter type territory. And that was the kind of experience that I had. And dental school for me was very closed off. It was very much like dental people hung out with dental people, dated dental people, did everything. And I just hated that cliquiness of it. I just hated it. I had no interest, you know. I wanted to be around diversity. I think that was really important. But what I was trying to say, to the point that you were saying about people almost reinventing themselves, there were a few people that came to university that had gone to school with other people, and they were like, she's nothing like that, she's reinvented herself. But after 2 years, her true character came out anyway. Not necessarily bad, but say she was a bit of a geek, for example, like the geekiness came out after 2 years. So I think, you know, it's not necessarily about reinventing yourself. It's either about finding yourself. But I think if you try too hard to pretend to be someone you're not, it's not authentic.
No, but sometimes it's someone you are, but you couldn't be
at school.
Sometimes it's there.
Or it's if you're at school and you're the cool kid, right? You don't need to reinvent yourself when you come to university.
Yeah, there's that too.
You don't have that social pressures. If you're at school and you're the awkward fat kid that people wouldn't remember you're in the room, right? Then you do want to read, because you want to be something. For me, I always want to be something of relevance, right? I wanted to be relevant. If I came into a room, I wanted people to think, that's Nilesh. He's relevant, you know. That was always a thing. I always had that insecurity about just fading away and not being important almost.
So do you think, and I'm just going to throw it out there for you, do you think that perhaps your overcompensation for success and legacy was perhaps a childhood trauma, because you didn't fit in to the school, in the schools, etc.? So the ability to really prove that you were incredible, which you are, you've, you know, left a real mark on the industry, was, you know, also a mask for your childhood trauma and worth, as it were. And I'm just going to analyze the situation. And on top of that, okay. And
amateur psychology.
and then
I need to pay her like an hourly rate.
And then on top of that, you also, on some level, have not been emotionally available for a very long time, and you think you've been available, but there's been a part of you that's been like unresolved, and that's why the relationships have failed.
We just said that.
Welcome to my TED Talk.
That's fantastic. We can just go home now because she just summed me up completely. That is so true. It was you take the emotion out of the equation. You take emotion out of the equation. You focus on the black and the white, and then you can make things
tangible.
Work. Right?
Yeah.
What's tangible? You can do this. You can do that. Whatever it is. And yeah, I was closed off. And I'm sure if any of my ex-girlfriends are listening to this, they're all probably thinking, "That's so true. I knew he was like this."
Yeah.
And I think it was only. And I think the other thing is that, and also after lockdown, I decided to do some more media work, right? To do some more TV, radio, etc. that I hadn't done before. And I started to do, and the only people who were really doing it was you and Milad. You're probably much the only two who did a lot of TV and media work. And I was like, I quite like that. I'd quite like to do that. So I started doing some, and then the Bartlett gig came up and a few other gigs came up, and I was like, okay. And then I think I got to that stage, I was like, you know what? I think I've reached this level of success that I want. Like, I'm happy with stuff. I don't want more, right?
Yeah, so true.
And it was materialistic possessions. I was like, if I bought another Ferrari, right, would it make any difference? I don't have time to drive the ones I have. If I bought another watch or another, I was like, it doesn't make any difference now. Yeah, I was like, it doesn't make a difference. And it was, you know, a lot of the revelation was when I was researching the Stephen Bartlett thing, and when he was talking to billionaires, etc. And, you know, how much is enough? And you have that Pavlovian need. You want food, shelter, accommodation, right? When you have that, everything else is a positive. Everything else is just on top. And there was one thing he said. He goes, do you think a billionaire is happier when he changes in his 80-foot yacht for a 100-foot yacht, right? Doesn't make any difference, right? If you go from earning $2,000 to earning 60 grand, that's a big difference. But if you go from earning 1 million to earning 2 million, is it really going to make much of a difference to what you do in the morning? No, it's not going to make that much difference. So now that I feel as if the pressure is off me in terms of the having to prove yourself, right? Now that I don't feel that's there anymore, that's now where I'm like, okay, right, let's concentrate on relationships. Let's concentrate on my friends. I've become so much closer to some of my closer friends or my inner circle than I ever have, you know, because I don't have that pressure of having to prove myself anymore, because I am who I am now, and the people that are they love me for who I am. Whereas before, I felt as if I had to be successful in order to get any attention, in order to matter when I walked into a room, where I don't feel that pressure anymore. But you could only do that by going through the journey. If I hadn't gone through that journey, then I'd still be that kid with the stammer.
But that's the thing. That's why I think sometimes that we're so hard on ourselves about the things that we should and shouldn't have done. And I'm similar to you in a way, because like, should I have done this earlier? Why didn't I do it? And I was the same as you. I was like, when I reach this amount of followers, and I'm still really bad at that. And like, when I do an ITV gig, a makeover program, this, and I think deep down it was like, maybe I will be seen and my worth will be enough. That's pretty much why I think I was doing that. If I really think about it, obviously, you know, there's the altruistic side. I wanted to help people, etc. But then I also thought that it would constantly having these goals would make me feel. And then, like you said, you get it. I have my practice in Chelsea, expanded my team, I've completed media. Do you know what I mean? Like, what more? And I think that's when you have to go on this inward journey. I have a coach, and he's amazing, and he showed me 2 mountains, and he said there's one mountain that people climb, right, and they think that those things would make them happy. So on the way to the top, it's all the materialistic things, all the external stuff that we think about, and then we reach the top and we're like, it's actually not that fucking great up here. It's not that great up here. So what we do is we then start on a second mountain, and the second mountain is all about the internal stuff, and that's somewhat more challenging. And I feel like it's important. What I do want to ask you is, do you think that, because I've known you for a long time, Nilesh, you know, you helped me when I was like a nobody dentist, you know, you took your time out, because, you know, I was a very ambitious, you know, young dentist, and I'm always grateful for those times you take, you know, to meet me for coffee, or, you know, try to guide me through different things. There's been a change. I feel like you're definitely on a different journey from like that man that I spoke to like 7 years ago or whatever. Do you think that's also because people have been having more conversations? Like now we have access to these conversations. You know, for example, Bartlett talks about this stuff all the time. Podcasts in general, you've got Lewis Howes, all these different people. Do you think that there has been a change, particularly within the male circuit, of men talking about their emotions and their relationships and their struggles?
Before, you know, when we first started talking, men didn't show vulnerability. They didn't. And our fathers didn't. And the men that I looked up to, they didn't show vulnerability either, right? They're very macho men. And we always thought that if you're vulnerable, then, you know, you're a little bit, you know, you're a bit of a wet blanket or whatever. And now you have so many successful men, successful not only in a career perspective, but in a relationship perspective, family men, etc., who do show vulnerability, right? And I think that has been a big shift, right? And when I look at my social media, I cringe when I look at my social media like 5, 6, 7 years ago. It was so bad. But when you look at things now, there's so many more men sharing things or being vulnerable and sharing intimate things in their lives and saying, look, I have a weak spot. This is my weak spot, right? This is an area for me that I'm not good at. This is something that I struggle with, right? And they're willing to share that with people. You never had that before. And it's those kind of trailblazing men who've said it's okay. And do you remember that, the thing on this clothing brand that said boys get sad too?
Yes. Why do I feel like I know that?
So that was a big movement.
Who was it by?
I don't remember the guy. It became quite popular. And that always resonated with me because as a man, if you were going to cry, right, if you were getting really upset about something, what do? For me, I'd almost leave the room, go to the bathroom, have a cry and come back and be like, okay, yeah, I'm fine, let's do this. Whereas now, I don't think there's anything wrong. So I was thinking, did I ever cry in front of a girlfriend? Like that for me is a big sense of vulnerability. Right?
Of course.
And yeah, I have, but only probably in the last 3 years or so would I even entertain that.
Yeah.
Because before you would never do that. And you are right, there's been a paradigm shift in men who can now be vulnerable and say, look, this is an emotive subject for me. I can talk about it and I can show that emotion. And I think you are right, it's people like Bartlett, etc., who have pushed that agenda forward for us. But the whole boys get sad too thing, I think was a really powerful movement. And now we know it's Men's Health Awareness Month. And going back to some of the things especially on some of the like Asian man podcasts. So I did one which was aimed at young Asian male professionals who have an intense pressure to be successful, to do this, to do that, to do that. And
similar to Middle Eastern.
Yeah. And one of the things that we spoke about was that mental health amongst young or South Asian males is really, and suicide rates for men are so much higher than women.
Of course.
Right? We know.
Yeah.
And my age is the peak age for men to commit suicide. And amongst South Asian males, it's even higher than anyone else. And it's because they put so much pressure on themselves to be something, right? That when they can't achieve it, because life is tough, life is hard, right? We know that. And we've all been very fortunate and very lucky to be in the position that we are. And we've all had help, right? We've all had a good education and we've all been able to eat when we needed to eat. We've all had, a roof over our heads. But for those people who don't quite make it in their eyes, a lot of them do choose to take their own lives. And in this country, we don't really cater for mental health as well. It was only recently did I consider going to therapy. And there's a very good friend of mine who has been having therapy and we've been discussing it. And I was like, maybe that's something I would consider. And I have done a few sessions and it has been really, really interesting just to learn about yourself, because you spend your life learning about what we do, learning about the head, the neck, the mouth, bone, pathology, and everything. But your own self, I never really knew myself, and that was something that I'm learning now.
I spend thousands and thousands of pounds on my inner self. When I first approached Payman about this mental health podcast, he was like, absolute rubbish, no one's going to listen to it. And then I reapproached him. Yes, don't give me that look.
It's incorrect.
And
incorrect information.
And then, you know what, he really saw that was something, and I think particularly within the dental arena, like mental health is rife, but I also feel like that people don't have the awareness to know they're going through something. And I think when I really think about it, I think I started having mental health stuff like since I was like 11. I had been in and out of therapy since I was like 21, I would say, and I had a really crap therapist for years. But I was like, is this what therapy is? And how does that make you feel? I don't know, you tell me how it makes me feel that way. And then it wasn't until I found my current therapist, who we had on this podcast, Ella, who also spoke at Mehi's event, the most recent one, who I introduced him to. And I think like half the dental arena now use her just because like she's so brilliant. And having a good therapist is almost like having a good dentist. Like you're like, you get me, you explain everything, and it's so great. And you know, your brain is like, it's a muscle, right? As in like, if you are exercising it in the way, you can impact the output. So I think it's been one of the most beneficial things. But what I had noticed, I have an Asian friend and her brother wanted to go to therapy and she'd completely shamed him for it, because it was not in a way that like she loves her brother, but she was like, you're wasting your money, and how can, you know, like this, how can you have therapy? There's nothing wrong with you. Well, you don't have to have a therapist to have something imminently wrong with you, exactly, you know, that's the whole point. Like, let's take away that stigma.
Do you think that the sort of, you know, the way you've described it is that you weren't fully open with relationships, you weren't fully open with yourself even. Yeah. And now things are more normalized and you can talk about it and all that. Do you think that sort of the evolution of, let's just call it minorities for the sake of the argument, in so much as, you know, it mustn't be that you live the same experience as your dad. You know, it has to evolve, it has to go forward. But there's for me a tension between keeping your identity as a young Gujarati boy, or not anymore, an old Gujarati man.
I like that.
An old Gujarati man. Asian to raisin.
Keeping your identity as what it is, but also evolving into the next thing. And you know, in a way, I understand why people marry people from the same religion and the same caste and the same. I get it, because you know there's that normality in it. So we know what it is. But at the same time, I find it a little bit disconcerting, you know, that so few Asians marry out.
It's true. I have noticed, and like, cause I have a lot of Asian friends.
You know, it's part of the evolution.
But also, I find it really remarkable how controversial things are. Like, there's disputes because they're not from the same caste. There's disputes because, like, and I'm like, wow, it's kind of fascinating, but also, I think I moved away from all that Middle Eastern bullshit, to be honest with you, because my father also married a Catholic when he was Coptic Christian, so that was like super controversial. But I find it like as Payman said, like it's especially within the dental arena.
I feel as if not our generation, but the next generation, I think it'll be much more open.
Do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I tried. I mean, I was with an Iranian girl for a long time, right? And we almost went the whole way. And the thing is, for me, I mean, my parents were never that religious, right? They have their moments, but generally they weren't that religious. And my dad was always a thing that, you know, as long as they're a good person, right? If they're a good person, I mean, we're not religious ourselves anyway. So it never really meant that much to me. Sometimes, but when you are with somebody who's the same religion, you do have a lot more things in common, etc. And it can make things easier, because Indian families generally are very interconnected. So I still see my parents every week. I still see my sister and nephew, etc. every week. And when you bring somebody into that sort of equation, if they're aware of some of the idiosyncrasies of being in an Indian family, that just makes life easier, right? But you are correct that Indians do still have some old school traditional values which don't really apply anymore in this country. And
it might be the best thing and the worst thing at the same time.
Exactly. And I think if you come to this country and your kids are growing up and your kids are going to school with white people, Iranian people, Middle Eastern people, etc., there will be interconnection with them. And if you look at Middle Eastern people, Iranian people, Indian people, they do have very, very similar ideologies, right? And 2 or 3 of my closest friends are Iranian, and they always love telling me that dish is an Iranian dish. I'm like, no, that's an Indian dish. Your burnt potato dish is rubbish. I don't like it, whatever it is. And but because there is that there's that familiarity there, it's easier to make connections with those people, right? But amongst our cohort or in our family kind of situation, there have been Hindus marrying Sikhs, there have been Hindus marrying Christians, there have been Hindus marrying Muslims. Like, it's now, I don't think it's as much of a big deal as perhaps
But
it was.
if you brought an English girl home and said, I want to marry her, would there be eyebrows raised?
At this point, my mum would just go for anything. She would like, you could bring her.
I want to chime in here. I think from a personal point of view, I had a bit of an identity crisis in the sense that when I went to Leeds, because of the halls that I was in, it was all like white, posh, public school people. I lived with Prince Harry's ex-girlfriend. I made the book. I always say that, yeah, I'm in the book. He trusted us. As he told us. But anyway, it was a very like white public school kind of thing. And, you know, they were very much like, oh, you're so exotic. You know what I mean? That kind of chat. And for me, for the first time in my life, I was like the brown person. And I think I tried desperately to fit in. Like it was really important for me to fit in and feel like I belonged. And I think understanding that my father struggled as an immigrant when he first came to the UK, I was like trying to be white, if I'm completely honest with you. Anyway, what happened is that the series of boyfriends that I had, so a long-term boyfriend, they were all English. Like I say all, but I had 3 white English boyfriends. But in the end, it was like I had this epiphany when I like hit 30 and I was like, I don't want to marry a white person because I actually love my culture. And I know this is complete generalization, but what I found was they didn't necessarily get my culture and get the craziness and get the Middle Eastern thing and get my parents. Like they would get involved like to a degree, but I think I actually craved something like that. And I think that's why I've ended up with a Greek person who also has similar kind of qualities and values.
No, this question is interesting because you're just about to get married.
Yeah.
Right? You hopefully will get married soon.
Lol.
Or not. by the way, if you don't.
Yeah, who cares, mate? Who cares?
But it's important to understand, that when you marry someone, the two families marry. It's real. Yeah,
is it real? Talk to us about this.
It's real. Because I mean,
you know, I'm lucky because my mother-in-law don't speak a word of English.
Oh, really?
Not even like hello.
Jack.
Yeah, Jack. That's what he said. He goes, it's amazing.
No, Google Translator might mess you up.
You're unlucky. You're unlucky. Look, the thing is that you end up spending a lot of time with that family. Yeah, there's no way around that.
I mean, they're in Greece, but sure.
You end up spending a lot of time with that family. Yeah, unless you're happy for the dad of your kids to be away a lot. Yeah, or you end up taking that son away from their family. So there's no easy answer to it. Yeah. So generally, you end up spending a lot of time with the other family. And if you don't get on with the other family, that's a problem. And it's easier to get on with the other family if there's some things you have in common. All of that is true.
I don't know, Payman, because like the thing is that my dad's family, they completely rejected my mum, like horrendously so, and still till this day, sadly. Okay, and then I would maybe agree with you in the sense that like we're not close to my dad's family as a result because they completely, first of all, they're all in America. Secondly, they ostracized my mum because they just would never accept her, and that anything in life, it was like Rhona and Tanya aren't married and living with boyfriends because they're sinned because Sharmina's Catholic, and it was like, do you know what I mean? Exactly. Even now. And the problem is, but my dad, but like you guys have seen my parents, and my parents are like such an inspiring couple. And the thing is, my dad is like, this is the woman I chose and I love her, and like they still stuck by that. So you don't I get what you're saying, but I also feel if you as a relationship are strong enough, the worst thing you want to do as well, which I've seen happen, is marry someone that your parents want you to marry or vice versa, because you're doing it to appease them or be the perfect child. You know, and I'm sure, Nilesh, you've had opportunities to be set up or whatever, and they've had like the ideal type of girl, but you know who you are as a man. You're like, I'm not going to marry someone just because she ticks a few boxes. Do you know what I mean?
I still remember my dad saying, Nilesh, I've got this, they call it a mangwa, which is basically like a request for marriage. It's called a mangwa. He's like, you know, she's from America, she's got a law degree, she's this, and he goes, she's a bit fat, but it's okay, we've got gym. And I was like, Dad, come on, mate. But luckily my parents were never that pushy, right? They saw what I was trying to do, and to their credit, they kind of left me alone. I think now, maybe
they want grandkids.
Well, they've got one grandkid. Well, they've got 2 actually. They've got 2 from my cousin's side. But I think maybe they were just worried that, you know, Nilesh will be lonely when he's older. Like, what will he do when he's older? You know, I think it's that concern from your parents. But from what you were saying before, and I've seen so many of my friends get married, so many of my friends get divorced, so many of my friends have good relationships, some of my friends are on their second marriages, etc. And there's so many moving parts to it, right? There's, from what Payman said, it's the family agenda. So if the families don't get along, you keep them apart, right? It's when they get together, that's when the friction happens, right? That's when you get the flames. If the mother-in-law is this or the father-in-law is that, you just have to manage the situation. But the key thing is that as long as the relationship between the husband and the wife is good, then you can get through everything. And I think every marriage that I've seen, they all have ups and downs. Nothing is easy, but it's always about open lines of communication. So if I did ever get married, and that's another question, right? Now, in my position, getting married can be a daunting thing because you have a lot to lose, right? Financially, right?
Especially for a man.
And I've got friends who are getting divorced and they're giving,
everything,
giving the
50%.
And when I look at the action, it gives me, my whoop starts buzzing because my heart rate goes up so high, because I'm like, holy shit, you're literally just giving everything away, like everything you've ever done. And then for someone like me in my position,
that's a lot.
I'm like, well, is that something that I want to do? Would it just be nicer just to live with her, or do I need to trust her, or do you get a prenup? And there's all these difficult conversations that you need to have because you do have to protect yourself.
Can I just say, so my partner is extremely successful. He's actually more successful than me, and he's accrued a lot of assets, and obviously I've accrued assets as well, like the clinic and stuff. And we actually had a conversation, a transparent conversation, and I said, I'm fine with a prenup because I don't want you to feel like I'll take anything from you, and I've got my own stuff. But it's so funny because, like you said, like when we were talking about it and then exploring it, like you said, automatically by me living in his house, not even being married, I'm entitled to half the house. I'm entitled to half the house.
Subconsciously, that's why girlfriends never live with me.
And it's really crazy because I was like, wow, the law is not in the favour. But you know what, though,
dude? You know what it's reminding me? What you're saying here, what it's reminding me of is the time where I thought, I haven't got time to go to the gym, and then I saw President Clinton in the gym. There are people 100 times more valuable than you getting married. So in a way, it's an irrational fear in itself.
That is true, but I think that's just something you need to have in the back of. So let's say if I turned up with some 22-year-old.
Come on, yeah, girl, exactly. Like, it's a bit different.
We haven't finished.
Yeah. Like you just keep that in the back of your mind. You assess, and
Agreed.
For me, I also go on the opinion of my inner circle, like my close friends. They'll meet her, see what they think. Is it approved? Is it? Because I feel as if sometimes we just have rose-tinted glasses, right? You're with someone, you love her, you love him, whatever. Your ability to make determinations on that person is skewed because of how you feel. Your family's ability to make determination will be skewed because how they want to protect you. So it's only your friends who can look at that person and say, right. And I remember I had this one patient who sadly passed away a few years ago that I did mad work for, like hip, bone, everything. It totally changed her smile. She became the most happiest person in the world. But she was a former CEO of a company, very, very diehard, cutthroat, really good with people. And she was like, Nilesh, if you ever are going to get married, I want to meet this girl. And I was thinking, shit, I feel sorry for her because she will just obliterate her, just take her apart. And you need people like that to meet the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and to help you make those decisions. But like I say, Bill Clinton has got time to go.
Hold on, was this CEO married, by the way?
Yes, she was.
Successful marriage?
Yeah. She was good. She was good. Bill Clinton has got time to go to the gym. He always got time to cheat on his wife.
Exactly, right? And let's not forget what happened to Monica Lewinsky.
Well, I was talking about the gym there. I was saying I didn't have time for the gym, and yet the President of the United States back then did have time to go to the gym.
But again, I think you just have to be a little bit protected about yourself because everything you've worked for, and the way I look at it, it's also not just my assets, it's the assets of the family and what's been built up.
Yeah, exactly.
I should choose where those assets go. It should go to my nephew, it should go to my sisters.
But you've got to start thinking about your will and stuff. It's all very complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look, the Duke of Westminster just got married, yes?
Yeah, I know, babes, but
The richest man in the country
you're not
just
getting
got
it,
married.
but also, like,
I think rich people get married every day.
Yeah, I know,
right?
I get
So
that, and they get
it's-
fucked over all the time as well.
And they get fucked over.
Yeah.
But you just have to have that conversation with that person.
Correct. And I think if you're in a really loving, safe, secure, like, do you not remember me and you about 8 years ago? I think it was on Facebook. I don't know if you remember this. We had a conversation, or someone put something up about a prenup. I think you did. And I said, and at this time I was single, I was like, I don't see anything wrong. Like, if you love the person, you can have the conversation. And all these guys that are kicking off being like, if anyone asked me to prenup, I would I'm gone and all this stuff. And I was like, guys, like, it's like the freezing the egg thing. It's like an insurance policy. Hopefully you never need to fucking action it, but you don't know what life is going to throw at you, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right, I know we've like talked about relationships like pretty much the whole way through this podcast, but I do want to ask you a bit about dentistry, if that's okay with you. So obviously you're one of the most successful dentists in the industry. You know, you paved the way for a lot of dentists, including myself in my embryonic stages of my career. What was your darkest moment in dentistry?
Oh, good question. Almost getting struck off, I think, was probably my darkest moment. So and that happened very, very early on. So I had a GDC case, which I said I wouldn't talk about, but what the hell, it's out there.
Yeah.
I had a GDC case, and if you Google it, it's really hard to find now because there's so much other stuff written about me. And it wasn't anything patient related. It was just something very silly. And when you're young, you make stupid mistakes. And that was deep. And I think there's been quite a few dentists or well-known dentists who've gone through that,
Correct.
who've talked about it and written about it. And I think I always used to make a joke that if I won the lottery, I would spend my time trying to sort out our regulatory body and how dentists are, if I just didn't give a shit, right? If I had enough money to do what I want to do, which would be to race cars around the world, and give up dentistry, I would put aside a considerable sum of money and get some people on board to say, right, the way we regulate dentists or the way we look at dentists when potentially they've done something wrong, even if they haven't, is so detrimental to their mental health.
True.
And we have had so many dentists commit suicide because they've had GDC cases. And there was one dentist that he had a case going on for 2 years. Nothing happened at the end of it, but that he had this little sword of Damocles dangling across his head for 2 years. It's really difficult to live with. When I was in that position, it was done after about 6 months or so. And I didn't have any family. I didn't have any kids to look after or a mortgage or anything at that time. It was really early on. And it was almost like getting in trouble for being drunk and stupid and sending a few stupid emails. But what I found really difficult was once the case was finished, you think, okay, it's done. I can move on with my life. And you and I have both been the victim of bullying as well in the profession.
Yeah.
And you'd get online trolling. And there was a point where I almost thought to myself, I'm going to go to this person's house and I'm going to kick the shit out of him. I'm actually going to go there and physically knock him out. And you would never do it, but you became so angry at these people. You think, how dare they say these things? They've never met me. They don't know anything about me. And then, you know, I used to do, and I think that's also rife in our profession. I think it's rife in any profession, is jealousy and it's online trolling and bullying, and we don't control it. And I think there's Shiraz Khan, who I'm very friendly with. He was being trolled online.
Really?
Well. And I remember I was the only one, because I sort of got PTSD from what happened to me. And Shiraz and I are so close now because of it. Because I was the only one that stood up for him and said, you know what, guys, leave this guy alone. Just back off and leave him alone. And I think we're now in a position where we don't really care what the other people think, because we've made it, or we've got enough now. We don't really care. So I don't have an issue standing up to bullies anymore. But back then I was very, very meek. I was very quiet. And I remember there was a well-known dentist who actually screenshotted one of my Instagram posts and sent it to my dad, saying, what is your son doing? And it was something to do with a car, or like the steering wheel of the car or something. And I remember my dad showing this to me going, who's this guy? And I said, oh, he's a dentist in central London. and he's just a bit jealous. And my dad said some profanities in Hindi, and then we kind of left it. And that online trolling, online bullying, I think happens so much more now. It happens so much more in university. It happens so much more undergraduate, because it can be a very, very prolific way of getting underneath someone's skin. When we had it, I think it was in its embryonic stages.
No, I mean, unfortunately, Payman knows already I still get it all the time, because obviously my profile is not just for dentists, but it's also out there to the public. But pretty much most of my trolls are dentists. And the abuse I get, and, you know, there is an eminent person within the industry, which is, well, I'm not going to mention his name, but sometimes when he's trolling me, I'll have other dentists be like, what is wrong with this guy? He's literally an old man, like heckling a young girl. Like, what is even going on here? And sometimes it makes him look bad, but like Payman was like, no, but like, you know, his people will think that he's like really cool for like calling you out. I'm like, calling me out for what? Like, my page isn't to him, you know what I mean? My page is very patient orientated.
Wait. We talked about this before, mate, but let's just separate arguments about clinical work. You know, that's the bucket I would put that in. Yeah,
it wasn't really. I mean, we'll discuss it offline.
Look, I agree with you. Some people use clinical work to bully people. Yeah, they do. That's right. But let's separate that out from that other stuff you showed me, where someone was saying, "Oh, I hope your parents die."
Yeah, no, like that's the stuff. Like, if you don't speak about the conflict, the war, then like you deserve to burn in hell, that kind of stuff. But the thing is, I had some dentists that had sent me messages, didn't even hide their profile, like, you know what I mean, just being like, shut the F up, are you being paid by this side, and all this stuff. But the point is, I think it is disgusting. Now, people say in every industry you're going to have bullies and trolls. But I tell you one thing, like, my partner works in finance. If that ever happened in finance, that is it. They lose their job. Lose their job. Yeah. If you use social media to bully or heckle a colleague, done. Even if they're not in your company, it's done. It's done.
I know.
And the thing is, we are healthcare professionals. We are under oath. We have a code of conduct and how we should behave towards patients. Therefore, I think we should have a code of conduct on how we actually communicate with each other. And I think part of the problem, as you were saying, is also the profession wanting to whistleblow on their colleagues for jealousy, which I think happens as well. You know, they'll be like, there is a dentist who I bumped into, and I don't know if it's the same one they're talking about. You know him very well. My heart broke last week because he had a GDC case. He was one of his colleagues was a whistleblower, and he went on antidepressants for 2 years, and he's basically left dentistry now because by the end of it, he ended up suing the GDC. So he sued the GDC for what they put him through, because suddenly he wasn't allowed to work. He had his own practice. His day was wake up, take his daughter to school, and then just sit around. They investigated his laptop, they investigated everything, right? And he felt like a criminal. Yeah. So as a result, he got one of the best barristers. One of his indemnity were like, no. Are you sure you want to sue the GDC? He was like, I am so sure I want to sue, and he won. He won. But the point is now his mental health had been destroyed. He's a 47-year-old man and he's leaving. He's like, I am done. And he was a dentist that loved his profession. So I think it really does need an overhaul.
We don't have that ability to self-regulate our own dentist. So if a dentist is trolling another dentist, especially if it's online or whatever, it's very difficult to do anything about it, right? Unless if you call them out, then that could have repercussions. If other people get involved, that could have repercussions. And I really would like our governing body to say, right, we'll look into online trolling. If you've got proof that somebody is trolling
which we can, easy.
And if you've got whatever you need to prove it, then they really need to be looked at. And I would love for, you know, where we have our little names on the little list to say this dentist has been suspended for online trolling. I'd just love it if that was on there, because, and you know, the thing is, whatever you do, whatever good you do, right, you'll always get people that will see the bad in it. When I did Ice White, there was a well-known specialist in central London who was going around telling people that Nilesh kept the money, so I kept the profits from the charity companies, right? Despite the fact that there's a big picture of me with a check with the owner of the charity going, here's the money, right? And so that made me understand that you can be the best person in the world, right? But there'll always be people that will try and get you to roll around in the mud with them. And there was that Oprah Winfrey quote, isn't it? Which is just be excellent. So whatever you do, just be excellent. Just try and rise above it. But you know what? Sometimes
You can't.
You don't want to rise above it. You want to get in the mud and you want to punch that guy in the face.
Look, I want to say a couple of things.
Here we go.
This is a symptom of the change from analog to digital. Yeah, and you're right. You both of you are social media veterans, if you like. Yes, people almost native to social media understand what a troll is, what the rules of engagement are. Yeah, but some of these older guys, that they weren't in the social media age. It's basically I'm going to say what's in my head.
No, but I think I disagree.
Wait.
Yeah.
Now, your solution to this issue, this problem, or yours, of having getting the GDC involved, it's not necessarily a better world. Yeah, it's not necessarily. Let's imagine.
There's accountability.
Wait a minute. This guy said, I don't think your approach on that composite was right for the sake of the argument.
he didn't
For the
say,
sake of the argument. Because I don't think your approach on that composite was right. You say, yes, it was. I think I did this. And then he says something slightly off. Yeah. Now what we're going to do? We're going to send it to the GDC.
No. It's not that kind of trolling. Like you've seen Nilesh screenshotting and ridiculing your lifestyle, screenshotting and ridiculing the way that you look, making fun of that's bullying tactics. I'm not saying whether they agree or not with your bonding protocol, your implant protocol. Like we're talking about things that are deeply personal.
Within a practice, bullying goes on 100 times. All the time.
I don't think so.
All the time it happens.
I disagree. Okay, fine. I hear what you're saying. Like it's the same argument with do we put criminals in prison because it doesn't, like most criminals when they release
we need
prison.
less GDC, not more.
No,
you know what I mean?
but I think that there is accountability, right? Because although the GDC, the law firms, etc., to some degree make a lot of dentists behave in line with patients because there's always that fear that your job is on the line. So if we regulate people's behavior online, we therefore make people accountable for their actions. They will think twice before they type. Or there could be some kind of guideline, like you should treat your colleagues with respect if you have a genuine concern about something, blah, blah, blah. But listen, we're not going to resolve this now. Nilesh is going to become a multi-billionaire and sort out the GDC. We've decided that, okay?
Nilesh, tell me about your political ambitions, because I remember that was a thing for a while. And I remember it was Conservatives. Surely you're not still...
Oh, it's absolute shambles, isn't it? Yesterday, Keir Starmer said... I do go to an NHS dentist, but I'm seen privately because they don't see
NHS patients.
And I was like, dude, you don't even understand how the health service works, right?
Yeah.
So we've got no hope, basically. Political ambitions, there always was. I mean, I really love that sort of stuff. But for me, it'll be something a bit later on, I think, not now. I think there's a lot of good that we can do, especially in our profession, which I think kind of gets sidelined, right? Especially as a political hot potato. Nobody really cares. Nobody really deals with it. Nothing really changes. We've had the same system. I mean, I think NHS dentistry, if it was handled properly, could be the envy of the world, because the clinicians we have are very, very good. And you've got clinicians who will work in the health service if they're remunerated a fair amount. That doesn't mean it has to be a crazy amount, but you got that. Most of the dentistry in the UK is NHS dentistry, right? It's just over 50%, I think, in the last numbers. So if you had a good amount of money thrown at it, then you could do something special.
There's no more money going into dentistry, let's face that.
But the thing is, if the money...
So that's a reallocation question.
If it's they put about $1 billion in, right? For NHS, I think it's about £1 billion.
I think it's 2% of health spending.
Whatever it is. Yeah. But you see, I think it's where the priorities lie. And is it something that we're going to sort out? No, but it's something I'd like to be a part of at some point, just to try and improve the lives of dentists, improve the lives of nurses, hygienists, and also the patients. Because at the end of the day, right, we're here to help people. And if we can make a positive impact on somebody's oral health, which I think has such a big deal with the rest of the body that we know, then maybe it's something we need to look at. And I still see NHS patients. I've got loads of little old ladies that I still see. I do get the odd pro bono case like Rhona, and you just try and help people, because if we don't help them, nobody else will help them. And sometimes it's karma as well, right? You want to help people and you feel as if that's going to come around. And I think some of my most happiest moments have been helping those patients smile and eat and talk, and they'll send you pictures of the wedding or pictures of them with the grandkids or whatever, and it hits a spot that nothing else does.
let's finish with karma again, yeah, because I'll tell you where the problem I've got with karma. Two things really. One, it seems a bit selfish. That I'm doing this so that something comes back to me. Yeah, if you really believe it does, right? The second thing is I fully accept doing nice things ends up with you getting nice stuff back in a obvious way, in a practical way. But when I say, do you believe in karma? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, hey, Nilesh, you came over, I was nice to you, gave you a coffee. Next time I call you, you'll be nice to me. It's not that. Karma is some sort of supernatural thing where, I don't know.
It's energy
flow. Gandhi.
I found £20 on the floor. Instead of handing it in, I spent it on something. That thing ended up ruining my life. That kind of karma, is what I don't buy.
You deep it too much, Payman. I think you just deep it too much, dude. Just do good and good things. It's it's a Hinduistic sort of thing.
I'm up for doing good, but
yeah, I get it, and I love that. I think it's Hinduism and Buddhism.
The difference, you've given money to charity.
Yeah. I've worked in Lesbos many times.
Yeah, although I find that less interesting than it sounds. Yeah?
So I don't do it for interest payment. Like I do it for the fact that, like that Nilesh said, like and again, for me, this is much more important than reposting a Middle Eastern post. I have been going for many years to refugee camps.
Yeah.
I've been going to refugee camps. Why? Because I have a skill that can help people. No, because I genuinely want to help people.
If you genuinely want to help people, why don't you donate a month's salary and send 30 dentists to Lesbos?
But I have. You're talking about that book my partner told me about.
A week. The same week that you're spending in Lesbos, you could spend in Chelsea, make enough money to send 5 dentists to Lesbos.
Yeah, because
if you really care.
Yeah, but also
about people.
No, because I also think, of course, I care about people.
If you really cared about people.
I really care about people. Let me finish. The point is, right, as well as like. My grandfather is half Palestinian, right? So meeting like Middle Eastern, Syrian, Palestinian refugees is something that I feel very connected to. And there is something much more profound about that. And, being with those children and because I have a large following, I am influencing a lot of dentists to go out there, which is what I do. And you know that.
Well done. Good answer.
You can see that I'm getting irate.
No, but it's effective altruism. Have you heard about it? So
and I also think, it takes more hard work for her to go herself.
Correct.
As opposed to
just throwing money at it.
Just writing a check. Because there's a risk involved.
Thank you.
There's time out of her life. There's the travel. There's this, there's that. It's ruining her routine. So that's why I think we can just write checks and we can throw.
No, my point is that you could read this book. You could drive this truck and give food to the hungry.
Yeah.
And there's a power dynamic in that. That if I didn't drive this truck and I didn't give the food, they wouldn't eat today. And there's of course you get something out of it yourself, right? And all I'm saying is that a lot of charity work can be seen as you're doing it for yourself, rather.
Totally.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's what you're doing. Yeah, I'm not saying that's what you're doing.
I know, but that's what some people say about Gandhi and Mother Teresa, But at the end of the day, they affected a lot of people. So I'm here for it.
Look at the end result.
Yeah, thank you.
It doesn't matter if somebody's going there just to do this, but the fact that the kid gets fed
exactly
is the end result.
I know, but more kids would be fed. If that was the thing we were really measuring,
true.
More kids would be fed by her staying in Chelsea,
and
working her butt off in Chelsea, and paying loads of other people to go, whose hourly rate is a lot lower.
But then look at it. If you're a bit of a control freak like me and Rhona, right? For me, I know that the kid will be fed better if I feed the kid.
No, but you could hire a professional, like someone who feeds kids. That's a job he does. Right?
Listen, at the end of the day,
you can go back and forth on that one.
At the end of the day, you need to write a book on this because I'm not convinced, and we are running out of time. So, Nilesh, it has been such a pleasure having you today on Mind Movers and hearing a different side to you. And thank you so much for your vulnerability. I'm sure it will help a lot of dentists. We've all heard, how you've become one of the most successful dentists, but I think it's so important to have other dentists inspired on conversations that we don't have on the regular. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot for coming in, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.